This is Scrappy BTV with a lot of interesting topics and videos. Please remember to like, share and subscribe to this channel.
Well, we've built a very close relationship with the island of Jamaica and the government, not only the host government, but the political opposition as well. Everybody's very keen and supportive to see this well drilled, purely because of the economics, the potential upside and value. The size of the prize is huge for what is a reasonably low and minimum investment. And in fact, as a demonstration of the support of the government, they've kindly hosted us this evening for this evening's shareholder event, which we're very excited about.
The energy demand for the world is going to be fulfilled all the way out to 2050 by at least between 40 and 50% coming from fossil fuels. We're in an energy transition. Transitions take decades. And there's a growing realization that reserves have to be replaced in order to meet that energy demand.
But the potential is huge. It's a potentially life-changing license for the island of Jamaica. The size and scale and value is truly mind-blowing. This project could be potentially 7 billion barrels of recoverable oil. It could potentially double the GDP of the island as a standalone project, and it could also generate over $30 billion of tax take for the island of Jamaica. So the scale is quite substantial.
The Jamaican opportunity is really a unique one. It's a massive acreage holding, over 22,000 square kilometres, which is the equivalent of 3.5 million football pitches, and really the opportunity to be first mover in a country that is energy hungry, that would like to replace its imports with indigenous supply. More than that, the way that we're looking at Jamaica now and the technical work that's advanced, we see a real opportunity for a string of pearls in terms of exploration and development. And we're really looking at early commercialization and how we can do that. And with that, we've built a development around, it's conventional, it's using floating production and storage offshore systems, such as used in the Stabroek license in Guyana, for example. And actually, we have many similarities to the Stabroek license. So in the look at how we would go about commercializing these opportunities, we've really started to attract and engage with a number of partners, and we're really taking those conversations forward. And of course, our joint purpose with the Jamaican government is to get to a point of commercializing and getting to production as early as possible.
It's frontier exploration. There's not too many of those projects left in the world, and the fact that a company of our size has 100% of 29,000 square kilometres of acreage is really, really impressive. And it's in our hands now to move it forward, and as I've touched upon, the size of the prize is so big for what is really a minimal investment up front. So I think we're really excited now moving forward into the remainder of this year, our existing work programme, and hopefully drilling an exploration well in 2025 or 2026. This year we've appointed a new country manager, Harona Thompson, and she'll lead operations on the ground and help us with all the permitting that's required for this year's work programme in advance of hopefully drilling an exploration well in 2025. We've also invested quite substantially in a number of training and educational programmes. To date, since we've come into the licence and taken over operatorship, we've invested over $500,000 in training and educational programmes. So the relationship is very strong. I think the shareholders really need to get behind the story now and really support the work programme and what we're trying to achieve. Tonight's presentation will be available on our website, and I really urge our shareholders to have a read of it. The technical story has evolved substantially over the last number of months, and we're really excited now. There's a number of additional leads and prospects that we've been working on, and the presentation will capture a lot of that detail.
Tonight, we gather to celebrate the partnership between United Oil and Gas plc and the Government of Jamaica, as well as to highlight the exciting opportunities that lie ahead in Jamaica's offshore oil and gas sector. We have an esteemed lineup of speakers who will share their insights and perspectives on this important collaboration. So without further ado, let us commence our program with a warm welcome from my dear friend, His Excellency Alexander Williams, the Jamaica's High Commissioner to the United Kingdom. Your Excellency.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, Lawrence. Lawrence has an excellent future as a politician. He speaks so fluidly and so well and so engaging. We need to get him into politics, no? So, it's my distinct honor and privilege to extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you to the United Oil and Gas PLC shareholders and stakeholders reception hosted here at the Jamaican High Commission in the United Kingdom. Tonight we gather in the spirit of partnership and collaboration to celebrate the fruitful relationship between United Oil and Gas PLC and the Jamaican government. The occasion makes a significant milestone in our collective efforts to unlock Jamaica's offshore oil and gas potential and foster sustainable development for the benefit of our nation and its people.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. And thank you very much to His Excellency Alexander Williams and, of course, Lawrence Jones and the JAMPRO team for hosting us here tonight. As Brian said, I'm a director at United, and I'm really excited to be here with you today to share our story and our excitement about our opportunity in Jamaica. In the next 10 to 15 minutes, I aim to take you through our exciting opportunity offshore Jamaica. I'll start at the macro level, why this opportunity makes good business sense. Then we will look at how we can monetize and realize the vast value that lies in this acreage. And finally, I'll share just a fraction of the technical evidence that we have that underpins our statements on value potential. United are in a unique position here in Jamaica. The resource potential of this basin is huge. To date, and without the benefit of full 3D seismic coverage across the 22,000 square kilometres. And just let me give you some perspective. 22,000 square kilometres, you can put 3.5 million football pitches into 22,000 square kilometres. That's the acreage that we have, which holds over 7 billion barrels of mean prospective resources. So there's plenty of upside here and plenty of running room. On top of this, and very important, is that the fiscal terms here rank right at the top in terms of attractiveness. When you couple this with how supportive and flexible the government are, the first mover advantage for anyone wishing to grow a valuable business here in Jamaica for the sustainable development of the nation and your own business are undeniable. And let me say that the opportunity to participate in Jamaica is far more than an opportunity to participate in exploration. What we will be doing here is opening up a new basin. You will see later in the presentation how analogous this opportunity is to Stabroek license in Guyana in terms of block size, resource potential, prospect size distribution, and production potential. The opportunity here is to be the first mover in building an integrated business in an energy-hungry country that desires to replace its imports and to be part of the economic development of the nation, while at the same time making substantial returns as a company. Another unique and very important aspect of this is that we as an industry and as a nation, want to accelerate and strengthen our efforts of decarbonisation and emissions management. And this is an opportunity to build a carbon-neutral development from the outset, with all of the positive impacts of that on our sustainability objectives and our reputation. So a quick recap just for this section. This is an excellent opportunity for monetising exploration prospectivity. We have over 7 billion barrels, and we have a very small area of 3D, which if I walk over here, we have 3D over this area, and we have the rest of the acreage here. And with that, we have identified 21 prospects and leads. So when we shoot more 3D and when we reprocess the existing 3D, that is only going to grow. So massive upside potential here. I'll show you later, and unfortunately we don't have time, and I'm sure you maybe don't want to see it, but we have more than an hour's worth of presentation of real solid technical material of why there is an active hydrocarbon system here. All the wells that have been drilled to date have had oil shows, even way back to the 1950s. There are numerous seeps identified and sampled both onshore and offshore. There's seismic evidence for hydrocarbon migration. You don't have to be a seismologist to see it. You can see the chimneys rising up to the surface, the gas chimneys. The Cretaceous source rock development is that we've done some basin modelling that shows where the source rocks are and how that has been built up in the basin. We have supportive government policy in fiscal terms, and essentially the resource here is comparable to the Stabroek resource in Guyana. So massive potential in the Walton Morant, and the potential to actually produce up to and exceed 1 million barrels of oil production per day. I suspect that some of you might have a question in your minds, which is, why now and not before? After all, the first well drilled here was almost 70 years ago. First, it is usual rather than unusual for frontier basins to take decades before monetization occurs. And if we think about Guyana, for example, which is the most recent frontier basin to be opened up, the first well was in the 80s and first discovery was in May 2015. The sheer scale of data acquisition and technical work that has to take place before you can work up a prospect inventory that sufficiently de-risks your acreage so that you can drill is huge, and it takes time. It's just as simple as that. So, essentially, where we are today, what's changed? Well, we understand much more about the exploration concepts here, where to target in terms of the offshore drilling. We've got a much better understanding of the basin, of the regional source rock development, etc., and the geological concepts. And we've got some high-quality 3D seismic, which we're going to improve upon and reprocess and acquire more. Okay, thank you. So I've shown you the immense size of the prize at Walton Morant, and let's now consider the very important question of how we would go about unlocking that value potential. We've identified more than 7 billion barrels of potential on the block, and there are numerous prospects and leads that are greater on their own than 500 million barrels, and some that are up to 1 billion barrels in size, and you'll see more of that later in the presentation. This resource distribution gives us a great choice of initial targets to open up the block, and which provides us with great flexibility in how we approach developing the block. Any one of these large prospects alone would create excellent economic return. But given the sheer scale of the resource potential here, we would develop the area using FPSO, floating production storage offshore hubs. These are just big ships, basically, that process things on board, with multiple large discoveries tied back to each FPSO. Our goal being to develop the 7 billion barrels of resources and to reach over 1 million barrels of oil production per day from the block. Just to give you an idea, these are tried and tested conventional development techniques, and indeed exactly the same as the approach being used to unlock the value from the prolific Stabroek block owned by Exxon, Hess and CNOOC, which is offshore Guyana, where they're using multiple FPSOs as hubs to develop clusters of discoveries. We also have the potential at Walton Morant to add more value from the associated gas. Often associated gas is a bit of a nuisance, but actually Jamaica currently has over 900 megawatts of thermal power generation relying on imported oil and gas supplies that could be replaced by associated gas from the Walton Morant discoveries. Given that most of the power generation and gas demand is on the southern coast of Jamaica, it's easy to land gas to shore and replace imported oil and gas with indigenous clean gas for power generation. Now, I'm going to take a bit of time on this, if I may. It's dense with data, and I'm sure maybe some of you cannot read it all. But if we just start with the map on the right-hand side, and you can see the relative geographic proximity between Jamaica and Guyana. And then if you look at the top right is Stabroek, and then of course our acreage here, and actually they're plotted on a relatively similar scale, so you can see also that in terms of the relative size they are roughly the same as well. But when you take a deeper look, what you will see here is that in many parameters, in terms of whether we're talking about the block size, the water depth, how deep you would have to drill to get through to the reservoir and total depth, how the source rock was formed, the resource potential, so 11 billion barrels in Guyana, 7 billion barrels so far in Walton Morant, the number of discoveries and the average resources per prospect. There are so many similarities between the two areas, and in terms of the development, we've talked about the FPSO hubs. We think discovery to first oil would also be around 4 years. The number of FPSOs, etc. Many, you can read them there yourselves, but there are many things that are very similar to a basin that, was relatively unknown not so long ago, very frontier, and is now in the middle of essentially developing 33 prospects to reach over 1 million barrels of oil production per day. So that's the potential here in Jamaica. And I think, just straying slightly away from my own notes, but I think there are times when the time is right. We've done a lot of technical work in United prior to drilling a well. We've done that so that we can de-risk this as far as possible. You'll see that the upcoming work programme further de-risks that drilling of a well. I think where we are in the world, there's a realisation that reserves have to be replaced, that the world will continue to need fossil fuels right up into 2050 and beyond. And that, frontier exploration is not a scary thing so long as you do your work properly and you do proper technical work and you understand the government's needs, the nation's needs, the commercialization potential, and how quickly you can start to actually commercialize so that you can generate cash flow to fund your further development. And that's the work that we are really now focusing on as a team in United on Walton Morant. So I'll take your eye, please, to the chart in the bottom left. That's the analogue Stabroek block, which the discovered resources, which were built up rapidly over the course of the 33 discoveries. And you can see that in the cumulative discovery plot here, down at the bottom left. We expect a similar distribution to occur on our Jamaican licence, having some billion-barrel prospects also, and numerous prospects with hundreds of millions of barrels. And this has led to the potential for 10 FPSO hubs on Stabroek, the first 6 of which are already committed by Exxon, Hess and CNOOC, and targeting the 1.2 million barrels of oil production per day. If you note the middle chart, which is the production profile that's publicly available from the Guyana partners, which shows that the first 5 FPSOs will reach 1 million barrels of oil production per day. We then go over to the right-hand side and compare to the right-hand side chart, which shows the comparable build-up of the Walton Morant production potential, where 6 FPSO hubs would be used to develop 1.2 million barrels based on the 7 billion barrels of resource potential. And this is very similar to the scale in Guyana, using the same tried and tested development techniques. Very quickly, and I'm conscious that you're all standing and you've been standing for a bit of time. So as most of Jamaica's industry and population centres are on the south coast, as I said earlier, this gives us great optionality to bring low carbon natural gas to shore for power generation and use by industry. And if we look at the high percentage of imported gas and oil Jamaica currently uses, that could be swapped for indigenous low-carbon associated gas from our developments. That can supply existing and potential new industry and, importantly, can provide pressure support to boost production as the assets mature. And that's really important because that's a very expensive part of, if you retrofit pressure support to a development, it's going to cost you a lot of money. So to actually be able to build that in from the beginning is something that's really important. I wanted to touch on and show you how attractive the fiscal terms here. And if you look at the top right-hand chart, it shows Jamaica has some world-leading fiscal terms, which are purposefully set this way by a forward-looking government in order to attract oil and gas investments into Jamaica. More than that, the production sharing agreement is in industry standard form with a production phase of 25 years plus a 10-year extension with a royalty, cost recovery and profit share. But the very high cost recovery of up to 80% and the contractor being given the right to over 50% of the remaining profit share results in some really favourable terms. This is being one of, and I've worked all over the world, so from my personal experience, this is one of the most attractive fiscal regimes in the world. And it provides the contractors with rapid payback, that's us, the contractor, with rapid payback on their investment from production. Very important point that I'd like to point to as well. The tax stabilisation clause is extremely important. Any investor will have life cycle certainty on the fiscal regime of the licence, and that is extremely important. Coming to the economic potential, and I'm nearly finished, I promise. When we look at the economic potential, we've looked at both the economic potential of a single standalone development of similar scale to the Guyana, excuse me, Liza Phase 1, and the overall economic potential of the block. The standalone oil field development results are very attractive on their own, with the full block potential being nothing less than outstanding, and we'll talk through that in a minute. If you look at the left-hand side, the standalone metrics themselves are far in excess of any company hurdle rates that I have ever come across. And actually, they're very comparable to publicly available data from Exxon in terms of the Guyana block. So we're talking here of the potential of an NPV 10 after tax of $4.6 billion. A rate of return, an internal rate of return of 45%. And that gives you an NPV 10 per barrel of just under $12. There are some things that we are looking at that we would do essentially to raise the standalone economic metrics. For example, you could lease FPSOs, and you could also, and this is something that essentially we would definitely look at, which is the early production system to generate cash flow early to fund further development, and that takes your internal rate of return to over 60%. Of course, the overall prize is actually much larger than a 400 million barrel development, which is the standalone, what the standalone metrics are based on. And as I said, comparable analysis for Guyana from Woodmac estimates a project NPV of $10 a barrel, and Exxon had previously reported project IRRs of 35 to 40%. At $10 a barrel using the FPSO hub solution, you can see on the right-hand side here, we could expect up to $70 billion of NPV from the 7 billion barrels of mean prospective resources. And as I'll say again, I'll have to eat my hat, but when we shoot more 3D, when we reprocess some of the 3D, it is undoubted that the number of prospects and leads, and that 7 million barrel number is just going to grow. So we believe that for all the reasons that I've showed you, Walton Morant represents huge value potential. I just want to give you just a flavour of why, do we have any technical evidence to say all this, or are we just talking? No, actually, what we look for in any work that we do, if we're a prudent operator, prudent company, we look for evidence of a working petroleum system. We look for the source rock. Where did these hydrocarbons come from? Is that source rock here? Where did it come from? How did it develop? Have we got hydrocarbon migration into our acreage? Do we have reservoir? And do we have a cap, a seal on top of our reservoir that means that our hydrocarbons haven't escaped? So as I said, when we are talking with potential partners and we're giving the full presentation, we have about an hour and a half of technical data that really goes through all of those elements that I talked about: the presence of a working petroleum system, the presence of reservoir, the permeability of that reservoir, the source rock that generated the hydrocarbons, and then the seal that's keeping those hydrocarbons in. So we're obviously not going to show you that here, but what I will say to you is that all 11 wells that have been drilled so far have found hydrocarbons. We've got the documented occurrences of live surface oil seeps and outcrop oil staining. We have satellite data that indicates the presence of repeated slick anomalies on the sea surface. We have seismic evidence for hydrocarbon migration, reservoir, trap, and seal. And onshore outcrop analogues also show us that we have source rocks present, reservoir rock, and seals. So from a technical point of view, lots of work has been done, and we are confident that we have all of the elements that are required here to make a discovery. I just wanted to indicate here that what we're looking at is what I call a string of pearls. So we don't have a one prospect wonder here and then, have to go searching for the rest of the things that we need to drill. There are a number of prospects here, and there are many of them that are in themselves up to 1 billion barrels, and many that are in excess of 500 million barrels. We've got a high quality database. There's been over $40 million spent to date to really analyze, acquire data, really interrogate that data and do the proper work to actually understand the risks that we face. And you can't maybe see them, but for example, there are some. Well, come over here. There are big prospects around here that are like Zumbador, for example, down here is 925 million barrels. The Morant area here, you've got a couple of prospects, Thunderball over 500 million, 600 million, and then we have Lead D, which actually is on the same trend as Calibri, which is the 400 million barrels, and there are many more that are here in this table. I just want to give you a flavour of the massive follow-on potential that we have here and how we can really build that development profile that we were talking about before. Let's go forward. Okay. Let's go forward. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. So just to give you a flavour for our work programme and why this work programme, why are we doing this work programme? So it's a generally accepted rule of thumb in our industry that the chance of success of exploration is 1 well in 5 will be a discovery. So the objective of this very low cost commitment work programme is to further de-risk a future well. So essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to, with the piston coring survey, sample the seabed for the presence of hydrocarbons to basically give absolute definitive data to indicate an active petroleum system. What that will do is take our risk from 1 in 5 to 1 in 4. And then we're going to also do some seismic reprocessing, which will then give us greater reservoir imaging. It will allow us to get a better handle on the size of our prospects and the volumetric range in those prospects. And that will take our risk from 1 in 4 down to 1 in 3. And that really is to constrain as much as we can the risk profile before we embark on a well. So in conclusion, phew, you all say, we've been standing for way too long. I have to summarise, I'm afraid, so I'm just going to do that. It'll take 30 seconds. Huge resource potential with lots of running room. 7 billion barrels of mean prospective resources and potentially the potential to double that or more. Many analogues to Guyana, which we've all been, as an industry, very excited about. I can't stress enough in the window that I think we're about to enter with respect to realization that the world still needs energy and it's still going to come from fossil fuels, and by the way, we have to replace reserves. I can't stress enough that first mover advantage here to build an integrated full value chain business with a very supportive government and very attractive fiscal terms. I can't think of anywhere else in the world right now where those conditions really all exist together. These are conventional developments with rates of return. So conventional, we know how to do them. They're being done all over the world. It's almost a cookie cutter approach with rates of return that are far in excess of any normal company hurdle rates. And there's the opportunity here to contribute to the country, the governments and the companies' energy transition and decarbonisation objectives. And with that, I will just say thank you very much for listening to me for so long.
I thought it was very refreshing, Andrew, to hear the Jamaicans speak welcomely to the oil and gas industry, and I compared that to what the UK government is saying. For example, while I know that the UK government is importing oil from regimes that we don't support, and I thought it was very welcoming, and it resonated with me. And generally, I think that Jamaican people are very welcoming, and that resonated as well. It was, it was just a very pleasant and. I appreciated that gesture to the industry. I thought the presentation itself was brilliant and well done, and I really enjoyed going through an oil and gas presentation with the wafts of the smell of rum in the room. So it was a very, very pleasant and good company.
The key takeaway for me tonight was just the scale of the prospects, and I don't think the stock market really fully appreciates just how advanced the prospects are, to the scale of them. I mean, talking about 7 billion barrels of reserves is globally significant, and I mean that the $70 billion MPV they were talking about across all those targets. When you think that United Oil and Gas share price at the moment and the market value of the company, there's a huge opportunity for United shareholders. And I just don't think that's really understood by the market. And the other thing that I really found fascinating was the comparison to what's the Guyana prospects and the Stradbroke prospect, and looking at the Walton Morant prospect together and just how similar they are in terms of the rock structure and the risk profile and the scale of those assets. And you think Guyana is now the fastest growing economy in the world. What's happening there is truly transformational, and Jamaica, 3 million inhabitants, something like this for that country is going to be immense. If it's anything like Guyana, it'll be amazing. So they were the key takeaways for me.
So I've been to a lot of presentation, and this one was quite good in terms they provided a lot of technical details, which I felt that somehow in other presentation they wouldn't give. So I come away with a lot more information that would allow me to consider making an investment in this company or not. So it's probably one of the best presentations, or in the top 25% of the presentation I've been at. Oh, Jamaica, it's a frontier country, but obviously after the investment in Guyana and Namibia, you want to look for the next frontier exploration. This one might be the next one. Uruguay might be the next one, but you want to be involved, you want to be one step ahead.
It is a great project, it is a great opportunity, and what I would say is it's great to be working for United Oil and Gas, especially at this time, being in a project for so long in the past, and to finally see, things pushing forward. And I think for those who unfortunately were not here, there is a lot of information I think you'd be very interested in, and I hope you can either turn up next time or you can ensure that you stay tuned.